Hello, welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday, May 15th, 2019. And for those of you who are new, my name is Marc Sabatella. I am the Director of Education for MuseScore, and this is a weekly series of chats that I do, interactive. If you're watching live, you can participate in the chat, where I just talk about some topic relating to MuseScore that's of interest to me that week, or that people have requested that I talk about. So, one of the big topics that keeps coming into play in some form or another is automatic placement. It's really the big new feature in MuseScore 3. Not that new, I guess. It's 6 months out at this point, or 5 months, whatever. It came out in December. But it's a wonderful feature, and I've talked about all the great things it can do, but we also know that there's people wanting to be able to do manual positioning that auto placement kind of gets in the way of a bit, and I've talked in the past about how to work around that, how to make it work with you, but we've really taken your comments to heart, and the last time I talked about automatic placement, I talked about some work I was doing to make it easier to disable it, to customize its behavior, and the changes I were working on are now already part of what's going to be MuseScore 3.1 that should be releasing soon and is already in beta. But even since then, I've now been working on more changes that are really exciting, and they are in the nightly builds that you can download. So I want to talk a little bit more about what automatic placement does, and then what my changes actually allow. And I think some of you are going to be really excited to see this. Okay, so if you're relatively new to thinking about automatic placement, just a quick overview. Automatic placement is what allows this score to look the way it does, to have the tempo marking staying out of the way of these notes, right? As I change the pitch of the notes, the tempo marking keeps changing. There we go. And the voltas here are staying out of the way of this, the dynamic markings are staying out of the way of the hairpins, and so forth. If I took that same score and loaded it into MuseScore 2, which I do have a version of, automatic placement, can I load this version, or do I have to do the Music XML version? Sorry, I think if I do this one, okay, let me load the Music XML version. That one should certainly work. So yeah, this is what that score looks like in MuseScore 2 with lots of collisions. This was opening it as Music XML, so it probably lost some of the formatting that I actually did have. And automatic placement, maybe one of these other ones is it. Okay, there we go. That one's where I actually did some manual adjustments, I guess. But as you see, there's still plenty of collisions to go around. This is what it would have looked like in MuseScore 2, but in MuseScore 3, we get this nicely laid out version. So that's what's good about automatic placement. All these things happen automatically. If I then took this passage down an octave, you can see that the voltas come down. Now they're staying up because of some other things that are in the way, but if I lower them and move the coda sign out of the way, then right, things just move around kind of automatically. You move something out of the way and other things fall down. Move this into here and the voltas move up. So it's doing a lot of wonderful things for you. But as an example of one of the things that, it's maybe in the way of, what if I decided I wanted to put this on top of the volta over here? Well, it's not going to let me do that, because it knows that according to standard rules of music engraving, the voltas should go on top of these texts. At least that's the rule that we are following. And the only way around that would be to disable automatic placement for either the volta or the text. But if you disable it for the volta, you will see that, well, now it collides with that. I guess, let me disable it on the other Volta too. Yeah, when I disable it on both Voltas, you see that it crashes into here. It basically wasn't that bad to disable it on the one Volta because the other one was, there we go. So if there had only been one Volta, because it was trying to align both those two Voltas, even with automatic placement disabled. So with automatic placement disabled, for that Volta, it's now colliding with everything. And all I really wanted to do was keep it from colliding with the text. So you might say, well, then let's select the text and disable automatic placement for that. Well, that's good, but it doesn't work if there was going to be other things that you wanted to avoid that text. So it's, excuse me, disabling automatic placement for individual elements is an option, but it definitely comes at a price where, depending on what's going on, maybe you didn't want to have to really disable it. You just wanted it to work a little differently. So one of the things that I had talked about in the last time I dealt with this, let me undo all those changes, was just an easier way of undoing, of disabling automatic placement. So for instance, if I wanted to disable it here, I've been using the inspector. Well, now there's a keyboard shortcut, just the equal sign. And you can customize that like all keyboard shortcuts in Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts. If I look for auto place, you'll see that there is toggle automatic placement for selected elements is got a default shortcut of equals. There's also a new shortcut to do it globally that basically disables it for all elements. So this is I consider a kind of a dangerous thing because it's really going to cause the score to not look good. Basically to look the way it did in MuseScore 2. But if I can go in and define a shortcut for this. Let me made me try tilde. Okay. I want it to be something not too likely to hit accidentally, but not being used for anything else. All right. So if I now undo that change again, I'm just going to hit tilde. Bam. You now see all the collisions that we had in MuseScore 2. The tempo is colliding here, this is colliding there, the voltas are colliding there, everything's colliding all over the place. So if you really, really want to completely disable automatic placement, as of 3.1, you will have that ability. But this is not good. I mean, now to put this back in order, to get it looking as good, let me re-enable it, to get things looking as good as they did before is going to require some work. More likely, you want to have automatic placement do its work, but then be able to do small little changes like moving this volta down or moving this up and so forth. Right now, if I try to move this volta down, I forget what's actually going to happen here. Whoa, yeah, because it's trying to align with the other volta. That's not good. In fact, that shouldn't be doing that at all. So now I'm very much wondering what's happening. Let me undo all my changes. Since it's obviously not back where it was before, I'm going to close it and just open it again. Yeah, that's with my changes in place. I'm not sure why it did that. But I'm going to show you with something I've actually tested with. What my changes now do that are, again, part of nightly builds. When I talk about nightly builds, let me be clear about what this is. Every time we make a change to MuseScore that is like accepted, there's like, people, since it's open source, lots of people write code to make changes, but not just because someone makes a change doesn't mean it actually becomes part of MuseScore. Someone has to then decide, yes, this is going to be good, and we are going to merge it into the official version. So only changes that have been merged get part of these nightly builds, but this change that I'm about to show you has been merged. So I'm going to come here, and oops, I need to go to my chat window over here. And paste in the link to the nightly builds. So that's where you can download them from. So if you go here, you click on your operating system, in my case Windows, do not pick this one that says special. This one should not be at the top of the list in my opinion, but it's for people who had been using nightly builds many months ago before we made a significant change to the file format, and that this is like a special compatibility version. So ignore that boldface special version and just take the first one you see after that. That'll be the most recent nightly build. So what does this do? I keep alluding to what it does, but let me show you. In MuseScore 3 as it exists, let me come to MuseScore 3 as it exists and load that same score. If I try to take a tempo text and just move it down here, it's not going to let me, right? It just says, nope, I know where texts go. Maybe I thought I was going to put it on the staff. Maybe I thought that was going to be a clever thing to do. It just will not let me unless I disable automatic placement. If I disable automatic placement, then all those movements I do work. But when I disable automatic placement for ability, but if I want to keep the benefits of automatic placement, I'm a little bit out of luck for me to do it. It didn't complain. Automatic placement is still enabled. And when I say it's still enabled, here, let me show you a little bit about what I mean by that. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to make it, I'm going to put that O directly on top of the note head. Nope, it won't let me, right? So I'll disable automatic placement and try it again. This is, again, with MuseScore as it exists in the official released version. So I've disabled automatic placement. But what if now I transpose this passage down or up, right? Now that text isn't following the notes. That's because automatic placement is disabled. With my version here, automatic placement is still enabled. So if I start raising the pitch here, the text goes with it. So automatic placement is still doing its job. It just allowed me to override it while I moved this to create this collision, but it still left automatic placement enabled. So that's the long and short of what happens here. But let me show you some really good uses of this. So here's another demo score I put together. Here's some. If this is guitar, these are string numbers. What if I want them on the staff? Well, here, let me just undo that for a second. If I took that same score in MuseScore 3 as it exists now, where did it go? Autoplace new demo. Then if I try to move it onto the staff, again, it doesn't let me. If I say, all right, wise guy, I'm going to disable automatic placement. Great, but now it's totally disabled. It doesn't avoid this collision. Well, with my changes that are going to be in an upcoming release, if I just drag this, no disabling of automatic placement, I'm just dragging it in place, and it did the right thing. It let me put it on the staff, yet it still created extra space for it as necessary. So I can put my string numbers on the staff, and everything else came down as necessary. Because again, I'm not disabling automatic placement. I'm just, it's like an override, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works. Similarly, if I take these two texts and maybe make them overlap a little more, again, that would not have been possible before. Here's MuseScore 3 as it exists. Just won't let me do it. Just won't. But I was able to do that very easily here, and yet automatic placement is still enabled, so that as I raise the text goes up. Furthermore, if I have text and I move it all the way onto the staff, that text won't be affected. That was a conscious choice I made based on some feedback and how basically how I thought things should work. So text that's above the staff, or below the staff for that matter, will obey what we call the skyline. So as things move above the staff or below the staff, these things will move, but stuff that's on the staff will stay put, is the idea of how I've implemented this. So here I have some text that, again, with MuseScore 3 as it exists, I cannot put it underneath the volta, right? I'm under the octave marking. It just won't let me. But in my version, if I do, I do, and it's fine. It lets me. Automatic placement is still enabled, but it just let me do that movement. Another interesting thing about this is if you look at here, this says it's placed above, which it is, and the offset 1.35 is relative to the top of the staff. If I drag it below the staff, notice it automatically changed to below with an offset of 5. All I had to do is drag it. It didn't move or anything. And so you can see automatic placement is still enabled here. This other text is still avoiding it. It lets me drop it exactly where I want, and yet now it says it's below placement. So that's nice. And it's nice because really to move text above and below the staff, you're really not supposed to need to drag it. Just press X and it flips between above and below. So you can see that, again, automatic placement is still enabled. When I flip it above, the rehearsal mark moves for it. Again, at all times, I'm leaving automatic placement enabled. Glitch that occurred in MuseScore 3 is sometimes if you took an element that was being automatically placed like this rehearsal mark, and then you tried to drag it away like this, what you'll find is it falls down a little bit because it got confused about the change in automatic placement. That glitch is gone now. If I drag it, when I let go, it drops right where I let go. So that glitch is fixed. So what else? In MuseScore 3 as it exists, lyrics, you can drag them horizontally, but you can't drag them vertically, right? The algorithm that tries to align all lyrics is definitely very harsh, and it just will not let you move a lyric up. Disabling automatic placement is going to cause problems potentially because, here, let me widen this measure. If you disable automatic placement for this syllable, I think I'd have to make the syllable longer for you to really see the problem. There you go. Disabling automatic placement means it's disabled, and nothing now avoids collisions with it. So so at least I can, with automatic placement, I can adjust it vertically, but things don't stay out of its way because automatic placement is disabled. Well, with my version, let's change that to be la 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 la. I can move it up vertically, and it just works. I didn't have to disable automatic placement. Now, if I do this, as I move things around, it's going to adjust things for me. But the point is, it's letting me do the vertical adjustment that I want to do without disabling automatic placement, so that my lyrics continue to space themselves as you expect. So those are basically the changes. It just lets you take a score and drag pretty much anything you want wherever you want, with automatic placement staying enabled, so that the thing you move will go where you put it. Other things will move out of its way. If you don't want that, you're still welcome to disable automatic placement. Let me go back to my version. This is my version. If I press $! on my la, then you'll see that now that automatic placement is disabled, it no longer is trying to avoid collisions here, right? It's letting this collide. So if you want the collisions, you can have them. Just disable automatic placement. But I'll press = to enable it again. Normally, I think it's going to be almost never necessary to disable automatic placement anymore. That is the hope here. So if I go back to like a real score here, and I say, hey, this tempo marking, I just really want to move it under there. I can. This retard, maybe I just want to squeeze it in there. I can, right? I can just do these things. If this actually, I don't like that. I actually liked it where it was before. But the default, if you don't like the default position or something, like maybe this retard up here. Okay. There you go. I didn't have to disable automatic placement. I just moved it. Again, that in MuseScore 3 as it exists just wouldn't have worked. If I tried to move that here, it says, nope, not going to let you. Right? It knows tempo markings go above slurs normally. But by gosh, in this case, I didn't want it above the slur. I wanted it below, so I just moved it there, and it just worked. So this is going to be pretty exciting, and it works for just about everything. If you want a crescendo marking on the staff, you got it, right? Pretty much anything you want to do just works. One of the ways that this does work, I should point out one of the mechanisms. There's some amount of this is magic, I guess, but it's not. It's actually very exposed. I'm going to show you the trickery here. In the previous Café, which actually I should, I've got that up here. I'm going to just get the link here. Here's the link to the previous time I talked about this is the previous time I talked about automatic placement. I talked about the minimum distance settings that are style settings you can set that control how how much space MuseScore tries to leave between this text and whatever's below it. It used to be that those were style settings. You would go to Format, Style, and then what is that, a tempo marking? So I go to tempo text, and then this auto-place min distance would set it. But it would set it for all tempo texts. Basically what I've done is I've made it possible to override that. That is how I'm accomplishing what I'm accomplishing, is by letting this be overridden. So I said 0.5 was the default value. Now you'll see minimum distance here, right below automatic placement. You'll see minimum distance. It defaults to 0.5. And just like all these other settings, it's kind of written in a turquoise color. That's been a subject of some debate, but and the reset button and the set as style button are disabled, meaning this is already at the default value. But if I just decrease the value just for that tempo setting, notice what's happening. It's getting closer to the slur. So I'm going to go continue to decrease this value. And as I decrease it, you'll see the tempo is now has been coming down and down and down. As I increase it further, oh, I have to actually change the offset too, because now it's at the position that the offset says it should be, 3 spaces above the staff. So you can mess with the minimum distance here individually for each element, but the magic, so that's not really magic, that's the same thing we do for almost all our other style settings. There's a style setting in the dialog, and then the inspector lets you override it. The part that's magic is when I drag this text, it will automatically change that. It was 0.5, now it's negative 0.8, right? If I reset it, it figures out how much do I need to reduce that minimum distance to accomplish the goal. So it was trying to keep this 0.5 spaces above that slur, and I've just basically said, no, I want it here. So it says, okay, I'll let you. Now I just have to change the rule for that thing, for that one text only. For that one text only, the rule is you're allowed to be negative 2.68 spaces above the slur, or in other words, 2.68 spaces below the slur. All the rest of the tempos are still right where the default was. It just overrode it for this one. So every time I drag this, you'll see that the minimum distance automatically updates itself to reflect what is necessary to do what I'm asking it to do. And at some point, once I've moved it far enough away, it says, okay, well now I can just leave it at the default. The default was fine. There were no collisions. There's no collisions if I leave it at the default of 0.5, so I can now move it all I want with a default of 0.5. It's still going to try to create extra space between systems for me. But yeah, that minimum distance here never changes. If I actually put it on the staff, that number changes to negative 999. 999, yeah. And the reason for that is this is what allows it to then not change even as the skyline changes. The assumption is if you put it on the staff, you just want it to be on the staff. You don't want it to change with the skyline. So negative 999 accomplishes that. If I put it above the staff, even really in tight, my assumption is you still want to avoid things like as the notes change. So there you go. So if the thing that you're moving, you move it so that it's still above the staff, but maybe just colliding with the slur a little bit, then I adjust the minimum distance just enough to get done what you want to do. If you move it all the way onto the staff, I assume, well, probably you just want it to stay on the staff even as things change. And so I set this minimum distance to 999. So what this allows you to do then is, you can drag things around. Oh, and it's not just dragging, of course. It's also, the keyboard. As I move things with the keyboard, you'll see the same thing. So this is back to 0.5, but now if I use Control down arrow, it just moves down, and the minimum distance changes for me. And also, if I get down to the other side, it still says it's above placement, and it's negative 999 as my auto place. But once I pop out the other side, you'll see that now the placement has changed to below, and the minimum distance now reflects whatever's necessary just to keep it here. So if I start moving the notes, the text moves with it. So it's somewhat revolutionary, really, but it's revolutionary because it works so intuitively now. It no longer feels like anything you're going to fight. It's going to feel like it's just doing what you want it to do. So I think people are going to be just ecstatic. They're just going to be thrilled with this. In fact, I know this is the case. I mean, I've showed this to some people, and we've had some people who were testing it before we merged it. And yeah, people are like, the people who are the kind of the harshest critics of automatic placement are the people saying, maybe not critics of it, but saying, wow, it does work really well, but I really need to be able to disable it so I can do what I want to do. They're seeing this now and going, oh my gosh, I don't have to disable it. This is perfect. It's doing better than disabling, and it's doing what I want. This is great. So yeah, this is going to be, I think, a game changer for MuseScore. It's, automatic placement was the big thing that came with MuseScore 3. And it's the big improvement that it makes so many things better, but it also caused frustration for some people who really wanted to do manual adjustments more freely. And so some people were frustrated with it. I think those frustrations are basically going to go away. So that's what you have to look forward to in an upcoming release, probably 3.1, maybe it'll be 3.1.1. We're not totally sure about that, but in any case, you can already get that nightly build and start playing around with it, and send me any feedback you have. So that's what is in store with automatic placement, and hope you are as excited by this as I am, and it's really, yeah, it's as I said, kind of a game changer as far as how people can work with MuseScore, because now you're going to get all the benefits of automatic placement, but almost none of the frustration, because things are basically just going to work now the way you might want. And then you have the inspector also of 3 and other improvements. Looks like I just went offline. Interesting. Well, I say I'm streaming here, but I don't see it. So apparently something went wrong. I will just sign off because I was about done anyhow. So I'll see you next week.